Episode 1 ended with the garden looking like it had good potential, but a deep freeze over the winter had a different plan. I was concerned I had lost a bunch of plants. This is the current view of the garden, but getting to this state hasn't been easy. I learned how to install drip irrigation, added a lot more plants, and almost doubled the size of the garden. It's been an overwhelming amount of work at times, but I love being outside with my hands in the dirt trying to make a difference for wildlife. I have doubted many times whether I could generate a garden which was pleasing to people and to wildlife. But Mother Nature has smiled on the garden, and it's a magnet to both bumblebees and people. As spring started, I assessed the damage, and it was amazing to see many of the plants were already starting to grow back from the ground. The plant of hope in the difficult weeks of early spring was the four-nerve daisy, as it was in bloom from early February.
Oh, that's amazing. The aphids have already found the milkweed.
With spring came the next phase of work. I planned to install drip irrigation to reduce water usage.
While many of these are native plants, they don't need a lot of water. I want to make sure they get well established, and so I do want to put in some kind of irrigation. Current irrigation I have, as you can see, most of it goes up in the air. 50% of water evaporates in most sprinkler systems, so I want to use drip irrigation, and I'll take you to the store to show you what I'm going to buy.
The most common drip system used by homeowners is low pressure, which has a filter and a pressure regulator. I decided to use the full pressure of the water system. I figured this would give me a more robust system and was much simpler as it only had 4 main components: elbows, bubblers, tees, and more robust pipe than a low pressure system.
So today's drip irrigation. It's been really cold, and all of a sudden in Houston it's turned to 80 degrees, so I realized I'm going to have to water these plants. I want to use drip irrigation to save water. I've marked the sprinklers. I'm going to block or cap off the sprinklers down by the street. I'm going to use the ones up by the fence, thinking that during the fall and winter the water will drain downhill, and so I won't have freezing and breaking problems. And I don't really know what I'm doing, so let's get started and see if we can figure this out. So using an elbow connector, small riser. And the hose will go off of that. Let's see how hard this is to get on. Not too bad. Okay, there we go. All right. So as I've started, I've learned one thing, that most people would use a utility knife, box cutter to cut pipe to try to make tees. I've actually found that PVC pipe cutter works really well. Just have another couple hundred cuts to make. So you can see that here's the sprinkler. It came up. I brought it over here to T, and over to here I'm going to install a bubbler, which I can control the amount of water that comes out, but it doesn't spray. You just screw it onto that, and then all I gotta do is then bury this after I've done the whole yard. So here's what the finished product will look like. You can see the top of the bubbler here, which will be watering this fern. But other than that, it's the piping is buried in the mulch.
Trying to find ways to make this project easier, I decided I would use a couple of soaker hoses in certain sections to cover large areas. One big issue I discovered: I had only converted half of the sprinkler zone and needed to take out an additional section of grass, which almost doubled the size of the garden. I actually dug out the grass in this section, which was a bear.
This project just got a lot bigger. Wrong size. So I've been to the hardware store just a couple times to pick up extra parts. I think I got everything I need now to finish installing. I say finish, it's going to take a long time, but thought I'd first show you how to set up some hummingbird feeders.
Please don't buy the prepackaged hummingbird nectar which contains red dye. It is harmful to the birds and isn't necessary. Save money and make your own. Use plain sugar and combine in a ratio of 4:1 water to sugar. It is really important to keep your feeders clean and change out the nectar frequently to avoid molds from growing or the nectar turning rancid, both of which can hurt the hummingbirds. I was hoping that by hanging the feeders, I would get some hummingbirds to visit while I was working on the garden. It's just a little bit early yet. I did cap the sprinkler heads by the street. I would end up reversing this and using all the sprinkler heads to add pressure to the whole system.
Like most projects, I've gone to the hardware store 7 times, and I thought I bought a ton to begin with, but I've had to make multiple trips, different adapters. It just goes on and on, but I think it's gonna work. Every morning I come out now, it seems like, and have a cup of coffee and see what's going on with the garden. Yesterday I had to take a break. I've been putting in the drip irrigation. It's taking a lot longer than I thought, and my hands and elbows from pushing this stuff together just ache, but it's coming. I'm out enjoying the garden this morning. Unfortunately, I know I have a problem, which is kind of putting a damper on it. I've put in soaker hoses, 3 of them, versus the bubblers, and they're just not compatible. I can't turn the bubblers down enough to have a similar rate of water coming out of those 2 types of devices. So I need to take the soaker hoses out and put in more bubblers. I've already put in well over 100 bubblers, 300 feet of hose, and now I'm going to put in probably another 100 feet of hose and another, I'm going to guess, 50 bubblers. So back to the hardware store. I think this is trip number 10. Hopefully in the next 2 days I'll get this done. I know that the animals are already coming to visit the garden. I planted 5 seaside goldenrod plants, and somebody ate 2 of them kind of down to the ground, hoping they'll come back, but that was an expensive breakfast. Done! So I'm going to turn the sprinkler system on that one zone manually. Just go out there and make sure that I haven't missed anything and it's all working. Cross my fingers. The little bushes behind me are elderberry, a native that were given to me by Josh, a neighbor who propagated them. The coolest part about this garden is I know more of my neighbors than I ever have. Everybody's stopping to talk.
Thank you so much for your support. Whether you stopped by and chatted with me while I was working in the garden, you left a comment on YouTube, or you subscribed. We're up to 375 subscribers on this channel, which I find completely amazing. So have a great day while you're out there watching wildlife around your home, and I look forward to seeing you on our next adventure. Oh, and there is one more thing I want to show you. Episode 3, I plan to discuss all the plants I have used. While I am going to take a short break to allow my body to recover, I am already planning where the garden path will take us in episode 4.